Hello, everyone. My name is Paola Corti, and I am the Senior Open Education Expert at Spark Europe. I'm welcoming you to this 12th episode of our Open Education Café series. Today, we are talking about open education advocacy and capacity building, how we can support upskilling effectively, and lessons learned from the field. We have great guests today, but first let me do some housekeeping. We are going to record this event, and in case you don't want to be shown on camera, turn off your camera, and you can also change your name. We are happy to welcome our guests, and I'm happy that we are going to discuss an important topic, not only seen from the perspective of European librarians, because you might know that we have a network that is called the European Network of Open Education Librarians, and they are great at advancing open education. So we are collecting insights from other areas to help them do even better in their field. But it's also good to know about the work that is ongoing in different contexts. And since we started this new series a while ago that is Pass the Open Education Baton On, we have guests coming from different regions. So today, let me introduce them very briefly so then they can introduce themselves with more details. And in alphabetical order, we have in the room Bea de los Arcos, who is a senior learning developer at TU Delft Learning for Life Center in the Netherlands. We have Roel Grol, associate professor at Han University in the Netherlands. We have Chrissi Nerantzi, professor in creative and open education, School of Education at University of Leeds in the UK. And we have Nkem Ekene Osiugwe, director of African Library and Information Associations and Institutions called AFLIA in Africa. She's based in Nigeria, and you might not see her with a switched on camera because we are facing some connectivity issues. So please be patient, and you have a nice picture of her. Whenever she will talk and open her microphone, you will see her smiling face anyway. So thank you all for joining, first of all, again. And I'm happy to start immediately with the first question. So today the topic, as we said, is advocacy, and we are talking about upskilling also. How can we help open education thrive? So could you please briefly introduce yourself and tell us something about what you are currently working on in open education, specifically on upskilling and capacity building. And also, maybe you can tell us something more around your experience, the approaches, and the activities or projects that help you build locally on this. And my first choice in the room would be Bea, going in alphabetical order, of course. So, Bea, if you want to tell us more about yourself, please, the floor is yours.
Always what happened to me when I was in school, because I started with a B. I was always one of the first ones. Anyway,
Same experience here. I start with a C. I was usually on top of the list.
It's like a course. Anyway, very happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invite. As you said, I'm the senior learning developer at the Learning for Life Center in Delft University of Technology. What I always kind of find it a bit difficult to say exactly what I do, because I do a lot of different things. But for the purpose of answering your question and to put it simply, what I do is I work with teaching staff here at the university to design online education. So online education, but not necessarily, so not thinking of online education as using an LMS with students on campus, but actually, let's go the bigger picture and let's try and figure out how your course is going to be available for not bound by the four walls of the university, but we're going to have it out openly available for everybody. So this is when I come in terms of kind of what it is to be open and how do we do open and upskilling and it's very much trying to work with people. And so we know one of we do have a kind of a strong experience in creating MOOCs. So in a way, that's for us the kind of the easiest of examples, because a MOOC as a massive open online course, initially the idea of open from our MOOCs comes with the idea that it is this content. This content is going to be released under a Creative Commons license, right? So your content is going to be available to others, so other people can actually take that content and study that content. But this is where it kind of gets more interesting: is the fact that we release the content under a license that allows for reuse. So the minute you say to somebody, we're going to create a course from scratch, but your course is not only for students on campus, it's going to be for the whole world. So we're going to share the course, or we're going to invite other people to actually reuse your materials as they see fit, in a way, going by the license. So the conversation starts to go in a different way, as in how do you design this? How do you decide this particular course? What are you gonna share? How are you gonna share it? How do you want to keep the students engaged? How do you potentially create a community? There's so many ways that you can be open when it comes to online education. That's the type of conversation that I try to guide the course teams that I work with. So it makes it really very interesting, because it goes from us educators, we are already open people, in the sense that it's all about telling stories and stuff, but sharing that story with somebody else. It's just trying to make people realize, how do you go from I'm sharing with my students to actually I'm sharing much within a much bigger context. So I think, in a nutshell, that's in a way what I do.
Thank you, Bea. This comes with some challenges that I also know directly. Let's see what the other guests would say about their own work. So I would leave the floor to Roel now, in alphabetical order again.
Yes, thank
Roel.
you. And thank you also for your kind invitation to be here today. So, as you told, I'm an associate professor at Han University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, and my personal interest is on teachers as designers of their own education. And within the context of open educational resources, we did several studies in which the teacher themselves have a very important central place. And we aimed at gaining a deep understanding of what motivates those teachers or discourage those teachers to use open content in their own courses, and to gain insights in what hinders or helps them to adapt and implement those open educational materials in their own modules or teaching activities. So my point of view is always that from the teacher as a designer of education, with the help of open educational resources. And we did research in both secondary and primary education, but also at the university and vocational level.
Wow, thanks a lot. It sounds like there is a lot behind you that builds and continues building in order to support the community of teachers and researchers upskilling in this direction. So happy to know more as soon as we dive into the content. Thank you, Roel. Chrissi, up to you now.
Ciao. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for the invitation, Paula, and it's lovely to be here and have this conversation with everybody else. So I'm in the School of Education where, as Paula said, I'm a professor in creative and open education. I'm also the senior lead of the Knowledge Equity Network, the co-chair with Rob Farrow of the ICDE, the Open Education Network, and a very, very proud GoGN alumna. And I know we have Robert here today, who has been pioneering this for many years in the Netherlands, but the home now is the UK, the Open University in the UK. So in the School of Education, I teach primarily, students, undergraduate and primarily postgraduate students, and I integrate open in the work I do with my students, but also outside the university. I'm active, as I said, in professional networks and communities, have set up a number of these in the past that have been sustained, the creativity for learning in higher education. Community, for example, I know Bea talked about community, and I think for me it's more about community and what we can contribute as individuals, as resources we have instead of creating resources. But we are also creating resources, and going to the question I think we had, what we are doing at the moment, loads of different things. It's really hard to just mention a few, but I'll pick one up that links perhaps to what Bea just said around MOOCs. I'm not involved in MOOCs, but I would like to maybe highlight something that I did with a module that is in place. It's part of our MA in education that I have completely redesigned with my students, injected openness through problem-based learning, also enabled by AI, and we have opened up that module that's traditionally closed and sits within a program and within the institution to open that window of opportunities to create communities more widely, and at the same time create the module companion, what we call module companion, that is available as an open book, where I worked with the students themselves, and we have done scholarship and research on that design process. And I will share, when I stop talking, the link in the chat if this is of interest. So community is really, really important. Thank you.
Of course, this is of interest, and I will personally look at it with a lot of interest myself. Thank you, Chrissi, for sharing. Sounds interesting. Also, the practices that you are describing in collaboration with students sound very interesting. So thank you for now. Let's move on, and then we will go back to some of the details of this. And Nkem, I'd like you to take the floor now, so that our audience can know more about your work and your involvement in advocating and upskilling for open education also.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Paula. I do appreciate this. Yeah,
so happy to have you.
Yeah, I am Kem Osigwe, and I'm the Director of Human Capacity Development and Training with the African Library and Information Associations and institutions with headquarters in Accra, Ghana. But we have membership from 34 African countries right now, and we are still growing. We are currently, seeing how do we position open education as a broader, within the broader ecosystem of open knowledge for African library sector, so that they will understand that they have key roles to play there. But before that, what we also trying to do is how do we create that mindset that you can do this? You're a part of the multi-stakeholder groups that are important for open education. So that's what we've been trying to do. And then also we've been, what we are looking at now is beyond the trainings and so on, we are trying to see how do we have a network of open education librarians, borrowing from what you're doing in Europe, so that we have a committed set of professionals that can work with us on this. That's one of the things we are doing within AFLIA. Then also personally, I started some activity with Commonwealth of Learning, the advisor on higher education. She had set up a workshop in December 2025, and I was a part of it. And from there, we have started to run a series of webinars. We've done 2 already, and we call ourselves the West African OER ambassadors. But this is not just made up of librarians. There are librarians there, there are teachers there, there are instructional designers there. And why we are there also is to not just learn from librarians or play with librarians, but also know what is this that these other sectors do that we can support them with as librarians. So that is like what we've been doing. But the important thing for us has been changing the mindset, like I said, and then upskilling librarians in Africa so that they can understand what is this all about and how can it help them perform their services better for the greater good. Thank you.
Thank you, Nkem. And if I'm not, if I didn't got it wrong, you are also setting up a network of librarians focusing on open education. Am I right?
Exactly. That's what I say, that we are doing that, and that we are looking at what you're doing, in Spark Europe, and then we are trying to see how we can do it in Aflia. But in doing that, we have reached out to Spark Africa. In fact, it was just yesterday that I got a response from them, because we want to do it alongside with them. We don't want it to be something that we just do only for librarians. We want to bring in as many sectors as possible so that they can also help us to teach the library sector. These are the things we are doing. These are the ways you can come in. This is where we need you, and this is where we do not, we can do ourselves, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And please reach out if there is anything that you would like the two communities to talk about, because it would be a great opportunity for both, I think, to have a discussion, an open discussion about what works where, around which variables, and it would be a good opportunity, learning opportunity for all, I think. So may I start directly with you with the next question? Because following, let's say, the flux of this discussion, I really would like now to know more about your visions about capacity building, and why does open education capacity building matter for higher education today? Maybe we can start with you, Nkem, and then go back to the other participants if you are okay with it.
I don't think there's any problem with that. You see, when you're thinking of higher education, especially from the African perspective, we are looking at getting people ready to contribute to the society eventually, getting people ready to take up jobs, equipping people with skills and knowledge to be able to function optimally in the society in whichever area of discipline they have chosen. And that is why we see that open education is important, because when you think of open education from our perspective again, what we are looking at mostly is contextualization. How can this thing that you're teaching young people, how does it work in Africa? Do you have examples of it in Africa? How can you now take, let's say, best practices from a country in Europe and apply it to Africa, given our circumstances, given our realities, given our challenges, given, what we live with daily? Because sometimes education, higher education, everybody wants to get that certificate. Everybody wants to be a graduate. At the end of it, what happens? Can you contribute meaningfully to the society? Can you help to solve our challenges that are so many? So that is, our focus has been, or why we see this as important for higher education, is that we want education that is functional. We want education that answers to what we need. And we think that open education principles, that they open the way for us. And then we also look at this issue of languages. You see, we are speaking English here, but for most people in Africa, English is like a second or third language. And sometimes when you learn, not sometimes, research has shown over and over again that what you learn in your mother tongue, it tends to be real. It tends to stick to you more than what you now go to school to learn. And before you know it, there's a kind of separation between, oh, this is home stuff where I speak my language. This is school stuff where I learn things to pass exams. And we have been thinking, what if you merge the two together? Or what if there's a meeting point so that people can now see that these things they learn in school can also be useful in the home environment, can also be useful in the community. And we are thinking that the best way to do it is languages. languages, translations, and stuff like that. And open education is like, it just opens that gateway. It opens the gateway for us to think of such possibilities, to see how can we utilize them. We are talking of higher education here, but we have done a lot for early literacy education, in this regard. But we also contemplating how can we now in AFLIA, for example, when you submit your abstract for our conferences, when you do that in English, can you also try to translate it into your mother tongue? Because in translating it, you will understand it better. Not just for others to read and so on, well, that's true, but for you to be able to understand, this is even what we are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nkem. And for sure, I mean, the focus that you're putting on translation is something that we deal with at the European level as well, because almost all of us use English as a second language. So it's something that strongly connects us. And I also believe that the power of translation is something that enable people like a tool in their hands. So I would like to ask Chrissi to jump in on this one now.
Thank you.
Because
Thank
I know
you.
that you also care about it as well. So let's start with you, Chrissi.
Thank you so much. Yes, very powerful words, and so important. I used to be a translator for over 10 years, and my undergraduate degree actually is in translation. I very much agree with you that learning different languages and translating and adapting, localizing, as we say, languages and outputs into different languages is really important. One more important point I would like to make, which links to what you said, Nem, is I would say that we shouldn't just translate from English into other languages. What is missing is these more diverse voices from different cultures, that translating the other way, so that we who are perhaps English speakers and speakers of other languages can use actually English as a lingua franca and get insights of what is happening in other cultures as well. So not just a one-way translation where the source language is English, but also where English can be the target language and we can learn from these other cultures. I think that's important. Also, we talk about advocacy in for open education in higher education, but I would say that it is maybe even more important to start much earlier, from early years, primary school and secondary education, so that when we get the students in higher education, they already know what open is, what the value of open is for themselves as individuals, but for their local communities also, but also for society. One thing I think as advocates that we are not doing very well, I think, is linking open education to sustainable development and the SDGs potentially. We seem to be underselling ourselves and not connecting to the sustainable development goals, if you like, which gives the purpose, which clearly talks about why we are doing it. And this is about sharing, this is about empowering people, this is about making a difference to individuals, to communities and society. So I think we have a lot of more advocacy to do, to be around the table with decision makers to make a stronger, I think, point about the value open education brings. And I think with AI, because we haven't touched on AI yet, I think we have that opportunity now. And it is about how we can spread open education, where we are fundamentally based on integrity, on collaboration, on being a voice there for others. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chrissi. I'm happy that you touched base on the SDGs. We also have a comment from Simon or Simon. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but he says, regarding SDG, I feel like sometimes these topics are too complex already, and we struggle to reach this higher level of understanding. So I can relate to that, and I think that what you said, Chris, is even more important considering this comment, because quality education for all doesn't mean that it has to be too difficult, too high level, too noble. It needs that it has to be useful, clearly understandable, and practically helpful for those who work. And education can actually support every single SDG discourse. So it's something that is really transversal. And I totally agree with you that sometimes we are also underselling it. We have two questions that I'm going to go back in a minute from the audience. I would like first to ask Bea maybe to jump in, and then Roel to follow. And if you can also maybe answer the question, but also somehow touch base also on, if possible, if it fits your purpose, on the role that institutions should play together with their own teachers, together with their instructional designers,
There's so many interesting things to discuss that I'm kind of struggling a bit as in where to focus. So, yes, I totally agree with Nkemi and with this idea of languages, right? And with Chrissi in terms of saying we produce in our own language. I am originally from Spain. I don't think I can speak open educational resources in Spanish. Yes, to SDGs and all this stuff, but I'm gonna kind of bring you back a little bit to the kind of the original question and then try and pick up on what's there. For me, in a way, it's the thing that I've struggled, and I've been a researcher in terms of open education, and I struggle now that I'm kind of more getting my hands dirty, working at ground level with teachers. I think that sometimes talking about SDGs, yes, we all follow the SDGs and they're a good thing. But to me, as a teacher looking after my class every single day, my main worry is what I'm going to do with my students. See what I mean? So for me, the challenge all the time, the conversation I have is just how to bring things. If we're going to talk about open educational resources, it needs to be what is meaningful for me now. How is an open educational resource going to sort out a problem that I have right now with my students, for example? So see what I mean? So in this case, I don't know if this is something that I would like to put actually the question back to everybody in the room, in a sense that it's what Nkem said. I said, oh, what are you talking about? OER, what is that? Right? So we still have a lot of that, and we will continue having this same what are you talking about? I don't do open, right? But so for me, so in the context I'm familiar with, what's happened is that we've tried, in terms of upskilling, the official training, as in, hey, we've created a lovely course about open educational resources, how you can change your course. And then we find that, for instance, it's very badly attended in the sense that people don't see the direct relevance as, sure, I'm not doing that, right? Which is why I think always kind of think big, but start small and try and make it as relevant as possible, institution-wise or department-wise. Sometimes you have an institution with an OER policy, but then it kind of gets lost into the many other policies because you don't make it exactly relevant to what it is that I need to do today in my class. See what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. So try. And I got to the idea of kind of learn by doing. So, and we see a lot. It's just so scary to share something. You've created a wonderful course. Now you're gonna put it out there for the public to enjoy. I said, well, no, we've gone through the whole variety of I'm not good enough, or somebody's going to misuse my material and all that. So this is why, and that's what I've tried to do with the we like sharing photo repository. So as educators, we use a lot of images in our courses, in our presentations. So I said, okay, I'm going to open a Flickr account, and I'm going to invite everybody, as in the whole of the university, to deposit a photograph in this repository. The only catch is, okay, it's your photo, so you're going to keep the copyright, but you're going to choose the permission you want to give to other people in order to tell them how do you want other people to reuse your photograph. So that makes it immediately interesting in the sense that, okay, so that's a very little something, a very tiny step that I'm going to say to you. This is about Creative Commons license, for example, and this is how you're going to use it. This is how you're going to make it relevant to you. See what I mean? So I'm trying to all the time. So then after that, you're using it, you're doing it. After that is when I can introduce, hey, and if you wanted to know more, then you can go to this page. But at least that tiny little something is something that I've done that I can directly think next time I'm going to use a photograph in my class, for example, I'm going to be careful that I'm not infringing copyright or that I'm using something that I can really then pass on to, and I can pass on the same message to my students. See what I mean? And I'm gonna stop. I could just go on, but I will. That's the thing. Is that for me? It's just make it relevant and make it. Yes, we all know the state of the world, and we all know how much we can do as educators, and how much we should do, how much more we should be supported. But on the day to day, what is relevant to me and my students? That's when we need to hit people, I think.
Yeah, and so thank you for that. And the grounding work into reality checks and first level needs is always a good approach. I also totally embrace that. And also, in my personal experience, this is something that helps take the first step safely, because you know that someone is encouraging you, you can ask questions, and then you can say, okay, it's not impossible for me. And you can start small and then build on this.
You said it. It's safe. It's okay.
Yes.
Nothing's going to happen. I've shared this little bit. It's okay. I can go on to the next step. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing happened. It was not dangerous. I'm not risking my reputation. At the same time, keeping an eye on also, why not high level connections like tagging SDGs as a second step. Okay. Is also something that might be relevant and might also connect with other policies at the institutional level. But it's not about me. Roel, I want to hear your voice now.
Yeah, I was listening to Bea and I thought, well, about the university level, you can have all kinds of institutional policies, right? And how do they trickle down to the floor where real teachers are working with real students? And at my university, for example, we have a policy that by 2030, so within 4 years from now, everything should be open unless, right? But saying that doesn't mean there will be many changes. So I really believe in the empowerment of teachers and educators to do something to make it real, to make your ideal reality. And one of the things have been doing in the last years is more research that helps us to understand the factors why teachers are hesitant or willing to reuse, for example, existing open educational materials, and what they do need to change about those materials before they can implement it with their own students for their own course. And what we try to do is gain deeper understanding in all those factors, and by doing so, I hope we gain insights at two levels, right? From the perspective of the teacher to help understand what makes it difficult or easy to implement something, and from the research perspective, from my own curiosity, we can come up with all kinds of recommendations where open educational resources should be characterized by, and to come up with design characteristics that can help builders of those materials and builders of those collections to support the reuse of those materials.
Thanks a lot. I think that I would like now, before we move to the next part, to the questions that our audience asked, because I see them as directly connected with what we've been discussing so far. We have Simon asking, does your capacity building rely mostly on informal discussions, or do you rely on resources? And Simon, as you see, the guests already provided quite important examples that explain that they are relying also on resources. And do you produce OER for your trainings on OER? I'm asking this question to our guests, and I can say a big yes about the work that we do in the European Network of Open Education Librarians. And looking at Doug's question immediately, because he adds, I'm also struggling with changing the mindset of instructors, English instructors to share their resources, texts, etc. for free. And I think that what Bea just said answers partly this question, but I want to convey the questions again to the guest in case you want to add anything about your work in terms of creating OER, to talk also about OER. Not calling anyone but Chrissi, if you want to go,
yes,
that's
okay.
a name.
Yes, okay. I think teachers or educators, all of us, including students, need to see the value of open education. What is in there for me? Like I said earlier, like Bea said, like we all say, when we recognize the value, I think magic can happen. And I think that magic doesn't come through just conversations. It comes, and I have done this multiple times, through collaboration and through co-creation, because only when we let go of this is mine in a very possessive way that is cultivated in higher education, because you get promoted as an individual for the work you have been leading, etc., etc. We know that. We don't need to repeat that. Only when we recognize the value and the importance of collaboration, of doing things together, and sharing not just the resources we as individuals created, but as a community, as a group of people, as a team with colleagues, and we feel a shared sense of ownership, which is really important, we will share more widely, because we will see the benefits, not just for ourselves, but also for the wider community, and, as Bea said, for our students as well.
Thank you, Chrissi.
So an example, a very brief example, something that I started, an open course, which was integrated into a program in 2012. That was flexible distance and online learning, an open course. I went to that was part of a master's final project that I had started, and then led to a collaboration with a colleague from Sweden, which I met, Lars Olin, which I met in at a conference, a problem-based learning conference. We then got together to co-create something which became that open course that we run for 2 years. Well, if you know open networked learning, that course is actually, and it's still running in 2026, 13 years later, you can see what that has brought. It was, from the output, a collaborative effort, distributed across institutions with no formal agreement, going back to what Bea said of and Roel about trickling down and top down, and how policies maybe are not the answer, how we can genuinely connect with colleagues and students across the world. And if it is an initiative that is genuinely co-created and co-led, I think that's what makes it more powerful, and it can survive and thrive.
Bea, I think that you want to jump in on this.
I can. I that's what I wanted to come in. That is just so. For me, that's so key, Chrissi, and everybody, in the sense that. But I invite anyone who is talking about open educational resources and saying, "Well, how do I get my my teachers or teachers to? They're not my teachers to share, and how do I think it's also important to kind of start moving away from thinking of open educational resources as the object, right? And start kind of moving more towards open educational practices, because then the conversation becomes kind of much more familiar in the sense that, you can talk about collaboration, co-creation, as Chrissi says, and then you bring in the topic of sharing. Sharing is extremely difficult. We're very used to kind of sharing within, space. We're sharing all the time. We go through life sharing. I mean, you've shared already since you got up in the morning, you were already kind of sharing your story of the day with somebody, right? So, but then when it comes to actually sharing an object, as in this is something that I created, then things get a little bit more complicated because lots of different things. So going back, if you scroll through the comments, Robert says that, it's just that gaining that confidence, right? So if we're able to say, it's I can do this. It's not nothing is gonna happen to me if I actually go and share a little bit of my, it doesn't have to be sharing immediately with the whole of the world. Start sharing within your department. Within your department, you can start sharing with all the departments at the university. Then it's kind of start kind of rolling the ball, and you start sharing. You go to a conference, I'm gonna share something here. You go to a meeting with other teachers, I'm gonna share something here. So little by little, it's very hard work. I'm not gonna lie. But it's just like go towards kind of how open we already are, trying to raise awareness that ways you are already open because you've done this, and that, and then guide the conversation towards kind of okay. So now you've created an object. What can we do with this object? How are you gonna share it? When it comes to then it brings policy, brings training, it brings whatever it is that you want to bring.
Thank you, Bea. You make me think immediately about the fact that being together and taking responsibility together about what we publish is also a way to open the door to people letting us know if we made a mistake, if there is something that can be done better. And actually with open education is all about changing the resources by adapting them. And why not making them better together, but also correcting errors, or maybe if it's not an error, just simply changing something that doesn't fit for another context and make it work there as well. So, and we have a comment from Simon or Simon again. Maybe a way can be about having an emphasis on usage of OER first, and then people may be more willing to share because they benefit previously, which is totally in the ethos of the open education community. Usually everybody encourages the others to start trying with a resource that someone else created, and by looking at it, finding ways to adapt it to specific contextual needs and change it, maybe together with students, like Chrissi always encourages us to do, or with colleagues, because that's a good way to start adapting the resources according to the licenses to specific needs. And I see another comment from Doug. Lovely. I see these ideas and comments about creating a project together can open the door to sharing. Yes, definitely. That's also my own experience. When I joined the community more than 10 years ago, that's how I learned to do anything without open educational resources, because people were leading me and welcoming me to do things together and ask them questions. That's actually my own path. Let's move to the last part of this exploration together. Now, what is the key question? So let's address this both bottom up and top down. You choose your angle, or you can also choose to address both. But what is the top down support that you expect to receive from institutions to even better, if it's already working, or start supporting open education upskilling and sustainable capacity building in a way? What should we ask for if it's not there yet? And bottom up, how should the open education community focus on as a next challenge for ourselves to strengthen upskilling and capacity building? And I would love to hear from Roel.
Yeah, perhaps it's a bit of my bias in my head, but I think the teachers are very important actors in the process, right? So by strengthening their capacities to use, find, redesign, and re-upload their educational open materials, they can be the mechanism that drives the rest, right? So I think perhaps there are developments within AI that can help teachers doing that. Perhaps there can be more research on how AI can support those search, find, adapt processes. And I would be very interested in learning more about that point.
Thanks a lot, Roel. And Ken, what about you?
You see, I'm looking at it from the point of view of how do you see yourself as a professional? You know, do you see yourself as part of this move for openness, or do you still have reservations? And why I'm starting from there is that, you know, the thing that we did in AFLIA, that we tried to write in the African library sector into the UNESCO OER recommendation. Like, we took it and broke it down. Oh, if you're an African librarian in this type of library, you can do this. It's part of this. You don't understand it. Okay, this is this and that, and that is that. To help people fix themselves in it and not feel, oh, it's just for teachers. Okay, I think it's just for those librarians that may be interested in that. So, you know, fixing people into open education practices, I think that may be key. And how can institutions help? You know, policies. I don't know, you know, are there policies, you know, finding out, are there technical or policy frameworks that can be built around open education in our institutions? This morning or yesterday, I was searching for policies in African tertiary institutions, you know, and they are far in between, you know, that talk about open education practices. You know, you have to search and search and search and search. So this is something that we can also now say, this should be the next step for us. Have a kind of policy template that institutions can adopt or adapt or, you know, tweak a little to help them, you know, get into this fully. Then Roel also talked of, I hope I got your name right, I pronounced it right. He talked of AI. You know, AI is all over the place. So many people are interested. Almost everybody is interested. The workshop we had with Commonwealth of Learning was actually on AI, and we've gone further to have a workshop on that. How can you bring AI into OERs? But the question at the end of it was, do we have enough AI literacy skills and knowledge to know what is what, to understand that, oh, this thing is not right? Go check it properly. Do we have that ability to help our users or learners understand that this is doable, this one is not doable? You know, because there are so many AI agents everywhere, and in bringing it into play in open education, we also need to have those standards that can help everybody use it responsibly, either for creating courses or for adoption, or, you know, adopting things and stuff like that. So those are the things that I think that we need for the next step. Making sure that everybody that, well, the sectors involved, that they find themselves inside of open education practices, not as bystanders, not as observers, not as mere watchers, but people that can also play definite roles in making sure that open education is a success wherever it is practiced. And then understanding, do we the skills that we need, especially the digital and the AI skills that we need in the area of critical thinking, to ensure that what we want to add or what we want to use is the right and proper thing for that particular place. Thank you.
Thank you, Kem. And also thank you for pointing to responsibility. And I would also add to that transparency. And I know that Chrissi is doing a lot of work in connecting open education and using AI tools responsibly. So I would like to have you commenting on that as well, Chrissi, because you're being very transparent since the very beginning about the use of AI that you encourage students explore together with open education in your role as a professor. So I would like you to tell us more about it.
Thank you, Paula. Yes, I think it's not just exploring, it's also experimenting. And I very much agree with Nem, where she said not to be a bystander. I think we need to activate and mobilize our educators as learners, as lifelong and life-wide learners. And a vital ingredient of that learning does need to be experimentation. That's my personal view. But in order to do that, we also know that in higher education, and I am an academic, and I can speak from my own experience, but also what's happening across the sector. There's a lot of pressure on academics to perform on various fronts and conflicting priorities. And one thing that is missing and is the most valuable for us as educators to engage with is time. So we do need institutions to recognize the value of open education, the value of open experimentation, the value of being part of open communities and open practices, and give us that space, that time to engage genuinely in curiosity-driven experimentation with our colleagues, with our students, with others outside higher education, because we often operate just, within, and that's not healthy for anybody. So only then, I think, when institutions will recognize the value that open education can bring and actually have a wider academic community that is a living, dynamic organism of learning. I mean, what else can we actually wish for? But in order for that to happen, we need institutions to invest, not in fancy buildings, which they very quickly do, but in educators, in people, because we are the most valuable resource of higher education to help shape a better future.
Thank you, Chrissi. Also, thank you for the emphasis on this. It's good that this is a time where teachers can go back to be learners because they need that. But this also requires time. So it's also interesting to see that. And the tension is definitely there. So I'm happy that we address this openly. Bea.
I totally agree with Chrissy. So I don't want to be all doom and gloom, especially now that we're going towards the end of this cafe. But it is true. I mean, talking and doing open education has always been very difficult, and it is not getting any easier, I think. And without really, so we cannot do it alone. Even us, here we kind of preach into the converted. We can't, it just can't be just ourselves. And so to an institution, I would say, as Chrissy says, you need the institution, but the institution needs to go beyond just kind of creating a policy. It needs to really have the steps in place in order to kind of implement that policy that actually goes down to absolutely everyone. There is the issue of time, there is the issue of rewards and recognition. We just kind of, the loop is exactly the same all the time. And then, the thing, and it's been mentioned a lot before, we need to come in with the learners, with the students. Open education needs so much energy from absolutely everyone, and that is everyone, that leaving your students out of the picture is just not a good idea. And So yeah, so even being, as I feel a bit like doom and gloom, and I'm not a big fan of AI. I totally agree with what my fellow speakers have said. I still, what I would like to say is just like we're in this together, and even Martin Weller used to say the battle of open is won. It's not. It continues. And it will be kind of harder and harder all the time if we don't really pull together, I think.
Thanks a lot, Bear. Any question from the audience? Our time is almost up, and I'm already grateful for all the insightful comments that you shared with all of us. So thank you again. But I'm happy to open the floor in case anyone wants to ask a question directly. Doesn't seem so, but in case, no, please.
Yeah. Can I say something? I just remembered now. Tomorrow I have a meeting, at the Nigerian Book Fair. I'm going to do a presentation on openness, and already I'm getting this feedback or something that why do or how do I put it? Why do libraries think that publishers and book authors that they don't need to eat? And it's as if, you see, so when as we are trying to sell open education practices, let us also remember that there are other people in the room that need to be educated on why open education is critical at this stage of development. I'm thinking about my own space, let's say in Africa, in Nigeria, in fact, in the whole of Africa, why open education practices, why we need that here. Because it's easy to assume, oh, yep, it's been said, yes, everybody knows this is right, yes, there's support from here and there, but when you look at it from certain perspectives, you find out that there's always a kind of from some spaces, negative feedback that we also have to find a way to tackle depending on the space where you are in. We also have to find avenues to address such concerns so that they will understand that, oh, this is just for this. It doesn't stop you from doing what you want to do, but this is just for this, to help to help people gain access to educational resources, to help people learn better, to help people learn in their languages and stuff like that. So that's just what I wanted to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken, for this additional comment. Thank you. And Chrissi, I know that you wanted to add something, so please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, just very, very briefly about publishing that was just mentioned in academic publishing. I think it is about time to to change the scenery in academic publishing and claim back as an academic community that academic publishing is done by the academic community themselves and not by the big sharks who are profiteering from and exploiting at times the goodwill of academics around the world. So how can we make that happen would be my big question. At the University of Leeds, we have an open book initiative and currently supported by our library and colleagues there. And I would like just to mention Kirsten McDermott, who's our OER manager, who does excellent work with others across the library to grow that project. And within 1 year, we have now 36 open book projects live. The main authors are all new to open education and open publishing. So this is a big, big success. So this is just a tiny example of what is possible, but more will be possible if universities actually work together.
I totally agree with that, but I really don't think this is a tiny project. It's big, and big congratulations to Kermit for her work, to Kristen McKermit for her work, because she's been doing great. I mean, just in 1 year. And look at the results by connecting publishing to this is like the description of the perfect learning experience in the opens, I would say, for all that are new to open education and that can learn about the rules and the challenges, as Bea mentioned, the practical challenges by being involved and by sharing their knowledge and having tools in their hands to teach after they've been publishing with the local university presses. So thank you all, and I hope that we will continue this conversation soon. I'm very grateful for anyone who shared anything in the room today, and thank you, Chrissi, for providing the link to your press book at Leeds also. Thank you, Bea, thank you, Nkem, thank you, Chrissi, and thank you, Roel, for your time and for your expertise and for being active members of the open education community. And thank you all participants to being with us. I will share the recordings as soon as edited. So thanks again. See you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.